Hello, and welcome to the Specialty Matcha Podcast. My name is Ryan. This is my co-host Zongjun, who also goes by Sam, and we're the co-founders of Sanko Matcha Products.
Yeah, we launched this podcast to discuss our learning journey in matcha, share startup stories, and interview experts. And today we have Lissi and Zach from Cosmic Matcha joining us. Welcome, guys.
How are you guys?
Thanks.
Yeah, so before we jump in to all the questions, maybe can you guys share a little bit about your personal and your professional background?
Yeah, so I can definitely start. Personal background, real quick. I've always been in health and wellness in some way. So really young, like when I was 19, I was actually a personal trainer at Equinox. I just
Wow.
walked in and
Cool.
yeah, very young and green, and they took a shot on me, and I stayed there for like 4 years. One of my clients and I actually decided to open up. At the time, we're in Dallas right now, and it was one of the first organic cold press juice bars. And we were also doing some other stuff we actually sold matcha and served matcha there. Totally different, obviously, than what we're doing now. This was 2016, but it was, I guess, you could say the first legitimate entry into matcha, not as cosmic cultures. So we did that. That lasted quite a while. We decided to split ways as partners. It's actually where I met Lissi, though, as a customer. So
And I event hospitality background, always into health and wellness to some personally. And when a awesome cold pressed juice bar that was actually used organic, like fruits and vegetables, I was all in, like first in line, and that's how I met Zach. So that was 2016, end of
yeah, it
2016.
was kind of towards the end of that project, or at least my involvement in the project. Then yeah, my time kind of opened up, and Lisa and I started dating soon after, and just kind of like organically evolved.
Yeah,
And then
I think with the fermentation really started because you started what you had always consumed, like fermentation, vegetables wise, was at Root and Press.
yeah, so that concept we made and sold fermented vegetables, right? As among many other menu items, and people really latched onto those. Again, this was like 2016. So back then, the space was just very different, and especially in Texas, it was not like the West Coast, where we also have roots to the West Coast. So just seeing the contrast of what was going on the West Coast and being in Texas really kind of led way to the road that we're on now. I mean, this was like obviously very beginning origin, but making those fermented vegetables there and then meeting Lissi and then kind of going down a personal relationship. We were like, you know what? Why don't we make the fermented vegetables and fermented foods a business and start shipping them and selling them? And it was, again, no business plan. We were just making them, giving them to friends. And then we created a Shopify store, and uh, people started ordering them. And then it was like we started getting wholesale requests.
And we
Um,
brought Air One.
way too early. Like
Way too early.
we jumped in.
Somebody gave, I don't even know what his VP of
the
something,
The family that
the
owns Air One. Yeah.
family, some of our vegetables, and they contacted us.
Oh, they contacted you. Yeah, cool.
We reached
was
out
wild.
probably like, I don't know, 5 times and just never
Before.
got a response.
Never, yeah.
And it was like one day I was sitting on my computer and it was like, hey, we want to do a purchase order. I don't even know if they tried them. They were like, we want to just put them in all the stores, all the SKUs, all at once, immediately.
Whoa.
And we're sitting there like halfway running this out of our house still. And we're just like, sure, let's go. And like not even considering like
Yeah,
being
that-
food manufacturers or whatever.
all
It
of
was
that.
What were the products? Was it like things like sauerkraut, or was it more obscure,
like-
or
Or like kimchi
Kimchi?
or
Yeah. So, I mean, I feel we did do our version of a kimchi in terms of it had gochugaru in it. So it had Korean chili pepper. But if you were talking to a very traditional, somebody Korean who consumes or makes kimchi, they would probably not consider it kimchi because instead of Napa cabbage, we used green cabbage or a mixture. So it was like more of a kraut chi, I guess you could say, that specific one. But we had multiple varieties. So we had some that, like with our wild dill kraut, for example, it had dill and garlic, but then we would use some more obscure plants. Like there's actually a Japanese plant that was in there called ashitaba, which I don't know, people drink it as tea.
okay?
And it's
What's it
called
taste like?
ashitaba. It's
It's very earthy.
it's earthy, vegetal.
Vegetal,
It's
yeah.
not, and it's one of those things that I've always been so intrigued by because you'll see there's a couple Japanese brands that sell it as steep tea, we had a powder which you could whisk it up like matcha, but it's not grown like matcha in terms of it's not shaded right, and it's not grown. I haven't found a powder, at least I haven't seen one on the market that is grown to be delicious as like a straight tea. It's also interesting because it's caffeine free.
Okay.
And I have, yeah, I mean, I still, honestly, I still have interest in looking into Ashitaba more and seeing the potential because it's not widely known, but it's a plant that's been consumed for a very long time. It's known as tomorrow's leaf because if you
Tomorrow's leaf.
pluck, yeah, if you pluck a bud, it's said to regenerate within 24 hours. So it kind of goes into the, proposed health benefits of rejuvenating tonic. It's, widely been used for like beauty,
Beauty
skin health,
herbs.
and rejuvenation.
Cool. Actually, I think there's a big space open in matcha for like blending and other things. Zongjun and I started our like tea journey at the Tea Institute at Penn State, and we invited a Korean group to come and present, mostly on Korean tea. But it turns out they have like this pseudo matcha tea ceremony, very much less structured than what the Japanese have. And he took like really high end ginseng, like probably the
Mhm,
jar was like $150. And he took
mhm.
a scoop of that and 2 scoops of matcha and whisked it together, and it was good matcha. It came from, like, one of the famous Uji houses, and it just
Sure.
blew my mind. I was
You're like, "Whoa." Yeah.
like, "This is, like,
Yeah.
flavored matcha in, like, a way I wanna consume it," it's not like someone's
Right.
added in, like, flavors or anything.
It's 2, like, unique ingredients that you wouldn't think of putting together, and then
Yeah,
it's like this symphony. Yeah, that's so, I mean, like, the vegetables that people, would recognize as sauerkraut, and then we'd have so many people that would say, "I am not a fermented vegetable sauerkraut. I despise it, won't touch it," and we actually converted tons of people, I
interesting.
think. But I will say, yeah, and I think what going down this path of now we're selling to 7 or 8 Air One stores, plus, like, a bunch of other small health food stores, plus trying to do direct orders and basically growing way too quickly while also we got pregnant, and there's just this whole snowball effect of, is this
Do we want to be in
do we wanna be
manufacturing?
food manufacturers?
Yeah.
Because when we started, it was like, you don't consider it. We're like product-based company, right? Like, we're passionate about these products. We
Something we consume.
Yeah, we make them every day, or we consume them every day. We make them, bi-monthly, monthly, whatever, not thinking about like this is what our life is going to look like scaling this type of business. And of course, we launched it at the end of 2019. We were doing farmers markets and all that. COVID hit in March of 2020, which also boosted us, especially online. Like, people all of a sudden
This
became
wellness thing, yeah.
immune
Yeah.
system, fermented foods, probiotics. It boosts your gut health.
Yeah, because you talk about the vegetables, we also did fermented coconut yogurt, so
Yeah,
we threw in the freezer and the process of getting the coconut meat
coconut
here,
meat from Thailand. That's
the water and the process of getting the water, I mean, all of that
yeah.
together on top of the sensitive vegetables that fermented 4 weeks, and
So
the
so yeah,
process of it all was
going into that a little more, yeah, like we were bringing in coconut that's scooped and frozen on the spot in Thailand. So certified organic coconut, they drain the water, freeze it in these like Mylar, like, high quality bags, and then so very heavy, right? Like bricks of coconut water, bricks of coconut meat. They come in on a
on a
shipping
pallet.
container, on a pallet. Then we had cold storage that we had to store it in. So the logistics, and then obviously when we're shipping this stuff, it's heavy, it's in glass, it needs to stay refrigerated. If we're shipping it directly to a customer, it needs to get there, especially in the summer, within like
Oh,
48 hours.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're talking about scaling a
And of course, we
business,
had to use glass, so it made it even heavier
right?
for
Because
the
we're
logistics of the shipping.
purists that we are.
Yeah.
It's like we're never going to put like an acidic food in plastic. And, so it's our convictions made a already challenging business ultra challenging.
You end up not working on anything that you actually like doing.
Maybe
Yeah,
2% of the time. And
2% of the time,
and to
yeah.
be honest, like I think jumping into something like Air One where you and which was super flattering, but it did really well there to the point like where we flew out there to look at the shelves because these purchase orders were, I think by the end of it, we were behind like 200 purchase orders. Like, I'm not even kidding. And it was
Wow,
like,
okay.
Yeah, it was just to the point where it was just literally out of control. And we were like, we need to go like look at the shelves, the stuff being rotated right. And it was just like, we'd send it there and then it would be gone in 2 days.
You're drowning in your own success.
But I think sourcing is obviously, I think, the backbone of our business really is
Obsessed with knowing the product inside and out. And then,
and
yeah,
something that we consume, something that they consumed 100 years ago, like we have it
100, like
hundred,
thousands. Yeah.
thousands, hundreds. I say hundreds basic to my family. I'm like, if it's not
100x. Yeah.
100 years ago, then don't put it in your body.
Yeah.
But
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's a good
that's
rule.
a good point.
yeah, if
Yeah.
I say 1,000, then your head doesn't go that far back. I think sourcing's
So,
just really important to us. And so we bring up our child indie, because when you have that type of transition in your family and you're looking at it, and we're drawing maps of production facilities
so
and looking at what our next steps in our journey looks like, that was something where I guess we should talk about, because we needed a bigger facility. So moving into, do you want to kind of like jump into
I was
that
gonna
part
say
of
it's like
it?
a
Yeah.
perfect time to kind of like, this is the very beginning of like how we ended up on like what we're doing today. Was So back to that original cafe that I opened in 2016. The project like started at the end of 2014, and it was in a very, at least for Dallas, like highly walking traffic, like the best retail real estate you could have. And I had this relationship with the landlord. Well, obviously during COVID, they suffered quite a bit. And I just reached out to him. We were having trouble finding a production facility, right? And he was like, "Hey, I have this retail space. It's 1,200 square feet. There's all the plumbing's done. There's a little kitchen in the back. It's actually, I mean, it's kind of a sad story, but it was a tea shop that opened up in March of 2020. And
Whoa.
suffice it to say, yeah, it just did not go well. They put like all this money into the build out. It was this really, a truly beautiful space. And we're like, okay, like this is a curveball. Like we really just need production. We don't need anything customer facing. And he's like, if you take the space, he's like, I'll give you this deal on it, but you have to have something customer facing. You have to have some kind of concept in the front. You can't just like have the door shut
Yeah.
24/7.
You like sell your ferments, but bring in other like retail and have it
So,
because of the traffic of the space.
right. Yeah. So we were like, you know what? This deal it's interesting. It's kind of like a semi-permanent pop-up in a way. We're right next to Sephora, actually. Like we shared a wall with Sephora. So we had all this like young, there's Barry's boot camp across the street. There's like suit supply over here. So it's like this young professional demographic just coming in constantly. And we're like, so for us, what makes sense is, what do we know? We love sourcing products and offering unique products. So we basically made the front like a mini bodega. There's no real grocery store over there. So we're like high quality olive
We were a
oils,
little
different
selfish,
spices.
already in Texas. We were
That you wanted.
sourcing
Yeah, love
to
it.
bring. So we brought in all those things, and something that we consumed every day on our own was matcha.
Yeah. And
So
we put in like a little like tea bar, matcha bar. And we also threw in a little for like, I don't know, people in the coffee world. We have friends actually in Los Angeles that own a coffee brand. So we like reached out to them and we're like, it's a good way to draw people in to have, coffee, tea, matcha that's like on the sign outside. And we put in a little espresso machine, one of those like Linea La Marzocco
minis.
minis. So
Yeah.
we were just like totally naive and just opened the doors, like did no marketing. And then all of a sudden people started coming in and we sold much more matcha than coffee. And we were like, okay, this is
Interesting.
this is interesting. People would come in and they were just like very interested in matcha. And this was like in
And we were
22.
the only people that actually whisked it
We had
in
obviously hand
in
whisked it. Yeah.
in Dallas, like where the process was completely different. So a lot of people just saw
Like those squeeze bottles of like they pre-made for volume
Yeah.
concentrates.
I was in Dallas, like, I don't know, 9 months ago and ordered a few matchas at some random places. I don't think it's improved much.
No.
We hear that all the
You
time.
guys were early.
Well, I mean, so like when I was 2016, it was much different. And then in 2022, so like we're not thinking about any of this, right? Because like we're just making matcha at home and we're sourcing, high quality delicious matcha from, our contacts in Japan at this time, right? And we don't even consider like what the average consumer is walking into every day when they're either ordering a matcha online to prepare at home or like whether they're ordering it at a cafe and it's being served to them. We only know our experience, right? So all of a sudden now, for the first time, we have the general public walking into this space. And it was like instantly people are like, oh my God, this is the best matcha I've ever had. And we're just like,
And I want to note,
interesting.
like
I mean,
and not knocking on, but we didn't add a lot of ads. Like we wanted people to actually
no
taste the
syrups
matcha,
or,
so we
yeah.
didn't have a lot
Nice.
of additives. So we, or, our matchas, and then we made because we had a lot of extra
Coconut.
coconut. we made we
Yeah.
made coconut milk from scratch, which people like loved, and
Which
Wow.
then
then
again, the coconut turned into another problem. It's like we'd run out of coconut milk, and I'm just like,
yeah.
you know,
But, we did, all of and then we did obviously like milks, and then we had some like maple for our
yeah, maple syrup was like the only people would be like, so what
additive.
syrups do you have? And we're like, have you heard of it? Vermont maple syrups?
Yeah.
Just, and
It was delicious, and people actually, I think, were able to enjoy and taste the matcha, which was, and the feedback was great. Like we had to actually hire additional people to support
yeah. So then we're
us
like, okay, like this
making
is again not the business that I'm not trying to hire baristas
yeah.
and scale coffee matcha tea shop. Like this is not slash grocery store slash production facility. I'm
Yeah.
like, it was
But
just like,
organically, people started as we want your matcha. Where do you get your matcha? So we were
right.
like, oh, we'll just like do a few of them and like have them like on the shelf for people to purchase. And then we couldn't keep up with what we had to decide
We had
how
to,
we
that
were
was like,
gonna
and then
move with
we
that.
just kind of, that path started to like become more clear. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, our child's now, he's still an infant, but going into toddler stage. And we're like, had this opportunity, like, do we want to, and other things like post COVID, right? With scaling, going back to the fermented foods, scaling that brand in 2019, or like with the prospects of what scaling looked like in the path, just everything changed after COVID in terms of like how people were shopping and, just grocery shopping in general and just all of it. And it just, distribution was a big sticking point. So if we were to continue down that path, it's like going and working with Whole Foods and all that. The industry became, it was already like complicated and it became even more logistically complicated. And especially for refrigerated products, it's the most competitive space in a grocery store because you have this much space compared to the shelf stable space, which is like much more vast. So
Yeah, and you have, like, a living perishable product in a cold chain. Like, that's
exactly. And it became very clear. It's like, okay, well, this seems like there's so much interest, right? And then, where we are now, obviously we'll get there, but it's kind of like one of those things where we're like, why didn't we see this path a long time ago? Like it's something that we're obviously passionate about, something that we bring into our life and practice every single day, multiple times a day. And, we were just so deep with our other products that we're like, and so attached to them because, that's like one thing I would say Lissi and I, and any founder, I think, or business is you become so emotionally wrapped up in what you're doing. And it's just like such a
Mhm.
part of you that to like, even if you know it's the right decision to cut something off or to change course, it's still hard to do, right?
Mhm.
Like, so you might have this idea that, hey, we need to kind of change course, but just getting to that point might take several more months before you're like, okay, we need to like pull the plug on this and like reevaluate because it's so part of
Yeah, I
you.
think
So
if it wasn't for our son, it probably would have taken us a lot
yeah.
longer
Okay.
because we knew like having this what our goals and the journey we wanted to have with him and his upbringing, what we needed to do. So I think we were able to kind of like had a clearer vision, I guess, um,
Being
with
nailed
him.
down to a production
Yeah.
facility like just didn't seem like the right path, right?
Yeah.
Like with
And we also
raising
wanted to
them.
be flexible. We love to travel and we wanted him to experience what we experience and traveling and being flexible and not pinned down to, a space. Like
Yeah.
we definitely
A physical
a
location, right?
physical
We were
Yeah.
and
location.
a lot of time with brick and mortar. So it was, the first project and then like even though not customer facing, like thinking about getting into another lease and another brick and mortar project, it just
Yeah.
didn't feel right.
You
So
had to make
yeah,
a choice.
yeah.
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 You guys have a pretty, like, unique point of view when it comes to, like, matcha and matcha sourcing. I remember I first came across your brand when Cole, from
Yeah.
My Matcha Addiction gave a really rave review. I think he said it was the best organic matcha he'd ever had.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that was probably the second time we sent, and those I specifically I knew to send these to Cole because I knew his affinity for matcha specifically from Gokusho Uji, right? I knew it was his favorite, and I was like, okay. And I also knew his kind of stance on organic in general, right?
Yeah,
So I
that's
was
why it
like,
was really powerful for me. It was like, "Wow."
to influencer, it's a wild world, I think that, and so I think when we knew we wanted to connect with somebody, like, we were very, like, specific and, who like, with our intentions of who we reached out to. So we love Cole, but I think exactly what you said, like,
y-
we
we knew he would as far as organic, and I mean
new
definitely
intentions.
talk about like kind of our range and like what we have and where we're going. But those specifically, he went exactly the way we thought. It was, he loved them, and those specifically, they're extraordinarily rare, right? Like, first of all, like, I mean, as you know, like organic cultivation in Uji is beyond rare. Most organic you'd probably see coming from like Kagoshima or other regions, or more higher elevation, where it's easier in terms of like the pest control, because where those matchas specifically come from, it's not at a high elevation, so you do have much more issues with pests. And then also being that they're competition level matchas, like it, it took years and years of from the farmer and the production standpoint to be able to even offer them to where the farmer was comfortable putting their name on it. It's not
Yeah.
like a quick journey. It's a very tedious. Many things failed. Wasn't like, hey, we're going to do organic and now we have organic matcha to sell.
Mm.
It was a very long process.
And when was that when you guys first start sourcing tea?
First started sourcing tea that we made available like as under Cosmic Cultures.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think we rebranded, right? So Cosmic Cultures, the fermented foods, that was the name of our brand. And I think we like relaunched the new website at the beginning of 24. I mean, time's running together. So it was like maybe the beginning of 24,
Yeah,
end of 23, we
Pretty
started
recent.
like teasing about it. We were obviously selling
through
matcha through the store, and
the
that was in
store,
2022. But
right.
to actually like put it out as an e-commerce sort of like website to where it was like live, I
Yeah,
think
phasing out and phasing in was the end of 23, and then I think we relaunched our website
in
in
24.
January of 24.
And I mean, that's a whole nother story of just like the process of like something that should
Moving.
have been quicker and then getting it up online, and obviously various roadblocks. And then things started to obviously intensify
And in between, we
with
were
matcha specifically.
farmers
Mm.
markets, so that was, like,
And we were still, yeah, we
in
were still popping
between.
up and doing like little markets and stuff like that. So yeah, like online where a customer could go and order it. It was in 24. Introducing the local community, it was like end of 22. Um,
Okay.
and it was not, it wasn't like widely known that we were doing that.
Mm.
So yeah, it was kind of like a tight knit thing at first.
What's been your sourcing philosophy? I guess since the beginning, and then maybe I don't know if you focused even more as you started to lean more into matcha. Like, how's that evolution been?
So, I mean, I know Lisa will want to jump in as well, but for lack of better terms, I would say organic, right? Organically kind of going into it in terms of how we live our life, right? So, like when we're buying food for ourselves, or we're buying food for our son, when we're cooking at home, or even when we're traveling and looking for places to go eat, we always look at sourcing and like, low intervention, farmers markets and direct relationships with the producer of the food. That's a big passion of ours. So it was no different with matcha and tea in general. Is we want to source tea that's in line with nature, that there's as little synthetic intervention as possible, because I mean obviously there's intervention with growing tencha or matcha, like producing, because it's like you're actively shading it and you're like doing all these things, fertilizing the soil, but
Yeah.
doing it in a way that's free of synthetics. That was our kind of like our overall guideline.
You guys have been sourcing organic matcha since 2022, like in the very beginning.
Yeah.
To offer to people, yeah. And then our like knowledge and sourcing it personally really started where we kind of got open up to it was after our first trip to Japan and kind of being introduced to
So we started, going direct in 2017, and then one of the matchas that we consumed personally was the one that we brought on
our
into the
very first
store,
offering.
yeah,
So our
and
Kodabu,
it's one of our offerings today, so which
right.
is really
Very cool.
special, and we got to meet them for the first time our last trip there, so that was
It was great to kind of like make that connection because
face-to-face
they're the
connection.
That's awesome.
backbone of how we started, and it's still our most, I mean, probably our most popular in terms of, it's been around the longest, so we have like such a base around it where, as soon as people see it's back in stock or it's available, like we don't really have to do anything. And that matcha specifically it's an amazing tea. It's delicious on its own, but it also works well if you're making a latte. So I think that's why it has that versatility. And yeah, it's just a delicious tea all around.
Do you guys care about like JAS or like USDA organic? Because I know there's a lot of small producers that basically do no intervention other than the shading, but they can't call it like organic because they don't have the money to go through, or
Right.
it's too complex. So like, I don't know if that matters to you or your customers, or like, how do you draw that distinction too?
Yeah.
I mean, the short answer is no. Like, we don't care about the government body that's like saying what it is. It's
Okay.
Mm.
yeah. I mean,
But I think the with our, like, customers, the trust in us from the beginning of how we source is that we're vetting these and having these direct relationships where we understand the small that are doing it beyond organic, beyond those
Yeah.
certifications,
Mm.
and that's what our, that's what our, I think, goal is,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, the goal is to offer. Right now, it's specifically focused on matcha, but very soon other tea and other things in general. And it's the goal for us, and it's always been the same, whether it was the ferments or tea, is that we know exactly what we're selling, right? So if the producer or the farmer can't afford to have that certification, but we know for a fact that they're not using synthetic fertilizers and that they're not spraying, then and we obviously think the tea is delicious because above all of it, if the tea is not delicious, it doesn't matter if it's organic, right? It doesn't matter because like no one's going to even get to this conversation if they don't want to drink it. So yeah, I mean, the most important thing to us is making sure we know inside and out what we're offering, and we've always had that trust with our customers. We never, even though we were using wild and beyond organic and always at least certified organic on our other products, like we've never put the label on our product.
Whoa, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we've never had that label, and customers have never ever questioned us because I think just kind of like getting to know the brand, that you can pretty quickly see like, hey, like we're consuming these every single day. We're offering it to our child. We're very transparent in terms of like how things are grown. And it's yeah. So
Yeah.
Because
How
organic is such
has
a complicated thing. Like, it's one of those things, like, it's a lot of politics, it's a lot of money,
Mm.
and, like, when you're sourcing from small people, like, small farmers, like, it's just, like, if you don't capture that nuance, you're leaving those people behind. And, like, they're typically
yeah,
the most interesting products.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially like with very small like lot production stuff. It's like, yeah, if you are overly concerned with having that label, then yeah, I think you would absolutely miss out on some beautiful things that are beyond USDA or JAS. JAS is stricter than USDA, but at the same time, there's definitely things that are approved that I personally
Yeah.
wouldn't want to consume every day, even though they're legal and organic. It's to the benefit of these agencies for more people to become certified, so they're not gonna make it impossible, right? So
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
standards start becoming more relaxed in terms of what it is and
Yeah,
what's organic.
JAS organic is not what most people think it is either. That's, been
And that's the other, I mean, this is probably a whole nother conversation, but we hear all the time from people that are like, well, conventionally grown in Japan, like it's
Sure. Than
obviously going to
here.
be
Yeah.
pesticide
Yep.
free. Like there's this we've even heard influencers and creators that are like, yeah, like it comes from Japan. Like I don't need to worry about it being organic. And I'm like, well, there's literally so much tea that can't even go into Europe from Japan because it doesn't meet the residue standards. Or, I mean, even if it does, right? Like not really knowing what's on these leaves, and then a lot of these insecticides, pesticides, they're water soluble. So it's like you're definitely pulling them out. I mean, and then, the whole argument again with matcha, it's like you're consuming the whole leaf. So there's an argument there that maybe it's even more important
That's
to
interesting.
some extent if your goal, and look, like we totally understand, like I've had plenty of conventional matcha and I can understand the differences in a conventionally, grown matcha where you're putting these synthetic fertilizers that directly manipulate the flavor, the outcome of the tea,
The
the
color,
everything, right?
everything.
And it's kind of these two very distinct categories. But at the same time, then you can kind of make the argument, and like where we kind of sit on this viewpoint is, are you actually drinking tea? To some like you are, but like are these flavors that are being manipulated? It's kind of like what you see in the wine world where you have lower intervention wines and you have this somewhat like some level of volatility in them. It's nature, right? So I think we always take the stance of like wanting to work with nature as much as possible versus manipulating it so much to the point where this product now is so far removed from kind of maybe not what it should be, but
What it was
where it
originally.
naturally would be. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even within that, as there's like you have like Zyrai where it's like, completely gonna be super wild in flavor and like you
Yeah.
never really know. And then you have well tended to, well fertilized with, lease or, fish meal, and like it's organic and it's maintained in a way that's very precise. And that is an organic tea that it's cared for and it's gonna be delicious because the producer, the farmer has put in all these steps to produce the most delicious tea possible, right?
How has it been sourcing organic so specifically? Like, was it more difficult in
Yeah,
the
it must be
past?
hard.
It's very difficult, and especially now with the shortage, and the demand for matcha, sticking to our convictions, right? Like wanting to only offer pesticide free. We've turned down matcha that we know would sell well and we could bring on. But we've gotten close with some to where we felt decently comfortable. But then when we sat back, it's like, you know what? This is a moment in time, like with the industry, everyone's scrambling, right? Like brands, producers, farmers, everyone's trying to figure this out right now. Pricing, if we can't grow as much this year, then we can't grow as much this year. We're going to support the people that we want to support, and we're going to stay true to the brand because like at the end of the day, that's what we have. And like, and seeing where the pricing is going with some of the tea, honestly, I think that there's going to be some die off of other brands. I think that obviously consumers are going to naturally, things are going to level out a bit. Production obviously is over the next few years should catch up to some level. So we're trying not to make any knee jerk
Yeah.
reactions, support the people that we've always supported, supporting new people that we know are in line with our vision and what we want to offer. That's kind of where we are now.
Mm.
Yeah, so we have
Yeah.
some new stuff coming on. I think the journey has been fun connecting and just trying to connect and obviously being miles away. But just, I think to your point, though, having the relationships that we've had for the time has helped us getting new relationships. I think us being consistent in our interactions and relationship this far with them has been super important into engaging in these new relationships that we're have coming on. So we do have some new
Yeah, we do have some like really new, exciting and highly allocated like matcha, right? Specifically for matcha. And then with some of our other ones that we've been offering, we've been able to increase not as much as we've wanted to because our demand is definitely there to increase more. But it's like like I said, we're trying to not add additional stress to a stressed out system.
Yeah.
And if a farm or producer is like, hey, we can only allocate this many kilos to you for the season, not pushing back, just, realizing they're in a very tough position as well. And
seems like
a long-term
a
vision.
lot of the farmers or producer are kind of keeping to what your like quotas or your quantities were the year
Previous
prior
years.
to
Yeah.
kind of like
Okay.
share the love and split it. But understanding what those new pricing looks like, I think naturally there's going to be
There's going to be some
potentially
drop off.
yeah, more availability.
Especially with the like very rare, for lack of better terms, competition level
Yeah.
teas. I think some of these brands that maybe brought them on, I would be shocked seeing some of the new pricing if, at least for this season, if they're going to be able to continue, or if they even have the customer base, depending on how that customer is buying and using that tea, right? Because some of the increases were, not so significant, and some of the increases that we're seeing are groundbreaking, for lack of better terms. It's,
Yeah.
Mm.
huge different from last season.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
especially where like you guys are sourcing too, because it's when you limit no synthetics on the fertilizer or pesticide side, on the competition grade, there's what, 2, 3 people, maybe
Yeah.
even less that make
No,
a
for sure.
product like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, and I think, like, that's where we need to we've obviously do the work, but need to really double down on the work, because the price point of those teas, for many people, will probably be a bit of a shock at first.
Mm.
But then when you explain, it's like, hey, when you're at the airport and you're paying $10 for a plastic cup of, like, C
Yeah.
grade matcha, it's like, is it really that expensive, or is it now the price that it should be because
Yep.
of what goes
Mhm.
into it? I mean, I don't know. I think also drawing the connection to more people of when they're making their tea, when they're making their matcha, it's like this whole entire year went into this one harvest. And of this one harvest, it is not a lot. And
Hmm.
so when you're sitting there and making it, maybe it'll bring more of an awareness and intention behind what you're actually doing in that
You
moment.
just
So
reminded me when
yeah,
we on our last trip to Japan, one of my favorite quotes and takeaways from were something that really resonated when we were sharing how much we appreciated their tea and how big a part of a journey. He said he really appreciated that you're not only just drinking the tea, but you're drinking the farmer's soul. And that
yeah.
really, I think, just connects you to the experience and what you're drinking in front of you and the love that went into that.
Yeah. I mean, and just the fact that I think more people know this fact now, that it's like it takes an hour to stone mill 30 grams of matcha. So it's like, I think people are starting to hear that more. And I think those little pieces of information is like,
Mhm.
it's such a new, novel product for most people in the West, right? It's compared to coffee. It's not the consumer's fault necessarily 100%, right? Because
Hmm.
they're not educated, and it's our job, right? Like, companies like us to, like, educate, and hopefully, when people see these price points, they're like, okay, well, that makes sense, right? Like, it might cost for this matcha, me making, let's say 2 grams at home, maybe that is going to cost me $10 for that specific matcha, but why? And okay, now I understand, and it's worth it, because this is not a product you can go buy at the grocery store. This is not these aren't like mass produced carrots that are at every Whole Foods in the country. This is coming from tiny lot, from one garden, milled on the property, milled on the estate, and then, packaged, shipped directly to us, and now we're giving it to you. So it's this very intimate, special product. So
Yeah. There are a lot of human touch that went into the process.
Yeah,
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 absolutely.
exactly.
And it's
it's
like
very
people
cool.
saying like matcha's rare because it only represents 6% of the tea grown in Japan. And then you compare it to like this like level, like it's I really have a bone to pick with some of the marketing out there. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, you
it's
could say it's rare or this is a rare cultivar, but really like there's like worlds of differences in some of the
Yeah.
sourcing.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think, for us, right, like some of the specifically these highly allocated and very rare matchas that we're talking about that are at this price point. These are ones that we're proud to offer, and that we are, obviously humbled and grateful to be able to make available to people, but they're not the teas that are growing our business, right? Like, in
Mm.
terms of for lack of better terms, scaling or offering more product, right? Like these are here for people that really want to expand kind of like their perception of what matcha is, what it can be, and specifically for us, like what organic matcha can be if it's done very carefully, very precisely, very, very, very intentionally, right? Like not that the conventional ones aren't, but to like add that level of complication that organic brings, it's really in a lot of it like the fertilization, right? Like to get those flavor profiles with organic fertilization and to avoid the pests. Because when you're making if the tea's delicious to you, it's delicious to the
To the
bugs.
bugs.
I mean, they're gonna come for it and yeah, so
Out of curiosity, on the supply side, have you seen like more farmers moving into organic or less? Like, what's the dynamic right now?
more in terms of us more, yeah.
More?
Maybe that's because that's what we're looking for, but we definitely have.
Yeah, and I mean, like, specifically can think of instances where farmers have mentioned an issue with pests that are resistant to like with every agricultural industry, right? So it's like you have these pests that are now becoming resistant to the pesticides. Then they have to use more pesticides or different pesticides. And they recognize that this is not a good cycle. This is not a sustainable cycle to just be using
Yeah.
more
It's
and
like
different ones.
natural selection, you're breeding super bugs.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, that's literally have seen that come up in conversation. So I think because of that, obviously, there's a lot going on outside of just the quote unquote boom with matchas. Like obviously, there's the whole environmental side of
Mm.
how tea in the production is being affected with the weather changing as well. So it's there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot going on with how much quality tea is available right now and I mean, I'm sure you guys obviously know the yield this year was lower than previous years across Japan, but the quality was really good.
Mm.
That hopefully with the prices being higher and the quality being so good this year, at least there's that.
Yeah, at least it's a little more understandable.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting dynamics. Have you guys seen, like, better quality coming out of, like I heard Kagoshima is making tons of investments in organic, and I heard it wasn't very good, like, 10 years ago. I wasn't drinking single origin matcha back then, but I've heard now it's, like, really up and up.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Kagoshima is now the number one producer of matcha. I think that they
Sounds right.
took the number one spot. But yeah, like there is a great climate there, right? And our Kotobuki is it's stone milled in Uji, um, by an amazing tea house, and but the leaf itself is grown in Kagoshima. We have another matcha called our Kasumi with a farm that we work directly with, and the farmer that grows that is arguably the number one organic in terms of like innovation, and how long he's been producing organic tea. It's they're both of those teas are amazing, and they have such unique qualities that are obviously very different than Uji, but
Mm,
in their own right are extremely high quality and delicious. And we're very excited about the potential of Kagoshima. We have actually a new farm that we've been working on for a while. There's it's funny because like some farms and producers you have this language barrier, right? This inherent language barrier.
mm.
And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's like whatever translator apps or that are being used. We've met in person and there's not a lick of English, right? Zero English. But when we communicate by email, it's super clear. There's no problem. And then we'll talk with other people and it's very challenging, right? Like even with the app, it's like it's very challenging. And what could take a month with somebody else might take 6 months.
Whoa.
But this so there is a newer I shouldn't say a newer farm. They've been producing sencha for a really long time, and they've converted a lot of their sencha fields, as you've seen this trend uh, happening kind of across Japan. There's to more tencha, and they actually just built a brand new tencha processing facility, and they're really kind of setting up to produce some amazing matcha. And we sampled some a couple months ago, And that's kind of like what I'm saying. Maybe even more than a couple months ago, and we really loved what they're doing, and we're still in conversation. S- In September,
Yeah, we have a interpreter joining.
in September we're gonna have an interpreter training, and next time, and now we have multiple teas right coming from Kagoshima. So when we're back in Japan, I'm actually really excited to
Yes.
go down to
Visit.
Kagoshima and visit because we did not make it on our last trip or when we
Yeah.
saw you guys.
I actually have a kind of a, related question to, like your fermentation background. Like,
Yeah.
have you guys ventured into like those fermented Japanese tea, like awapancha or like goishicha?
We haven't. I think like naturally that would be a great exploration for us. Just to be transparent, like after the matcha has just been so consuming with everything going on, right? Like it's we've had to really put a lot of effort into making sure that we secure the
Mm,
matcha that we need
yeah.
and the producers that we want to work with, right? So when things are starting to settle a little bit more, we've really wanted to bring on some delicious sencha and gyokuru and stuff like that. So those are going to be our next offerings outside of matcha. And then beyond that, yes, absolutely some more fermented teas I think would be great for us. But yeah, I mean, we're excited. I think like that was one thing too, like Cosmic Cultures, right? Like the name and why we kept the name, and we never wanted to pinhole ourselves into matcha only, right?
Ferments.
Or ferments or whatever we were doing. We wanted to like keep keep the opportunities available to us as we see fit or makes sense for our brand because we don't know. You start a project, right? Obviously we'll always have matcha, always have tea, but who knows, right? Like where this is going to lead to. Passion's a big driver for sure.
So I guess moving forward, like, how do you see the matcha conversation evolving in the next, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, especially around organic and synthetics and pesticides and fertilizer? Like, how do you what would be the ideal end state as you see it as, like, the whole industry kinda evolves and we all, like, gather new perspectives and try new flavors and new teas and sort of understand these agricultural practices?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously, 100% my viewpoints, and I think it will be easier to find high quality, delicious organic matcha. Like, I definitely understand the perspective that organic tea doesn't taste as good. But I also think a lot of that is because there hasn't been as much poured into it, right?
Yeah,
Because maybe
100%.
there necessarily didn't need to be. So it was working perfectly in terms of producing these high quality teas the way it had been done. And just to like kind of like go back on that, all tea was organic before 100 years ago in the sense of what we're talking about because
Yeah.
these chemicals just didn't exist, right? Or these synthetics. So I think going back to using what we know now about fertilization and also working with nature, I'm very excited about like what is going to become available to people and shifting the paradigm on what high quality organic matcha can look like. So I think that's definitely um that's one huge positive, right? And then the other part of your question, like in terms of like where the matcha industry is headed, is that
Yeah, and, like, people's perception of it and, like, these conversations. Because right now the conversation is, like, organic matcha is sometimes good, it's mostly bad.
right?
Like, and the reality is, because I hold both beliefs, I think, like,
Yeah,
fertilizer is important and pesticides can be important. On the
right.
other side, I'm, like, very deeply disturbed by some of the agricultural practices in Japan, and, like, I
Yeah,
want to see innovation in this space.
Yeah.
there's a class of pesticides, insecticides, neonicotinoids. If I'm not like pronouncing it perfectly, but it's for whatever reason the word's hard for me to pronounce. But that class of pesticides is very problematic neurologically, cardiovascularly. It's terrible for your gut health.
Mm.
Um, Hormones, specifically reproductive hormones, women's hormones, as are a lot of things that are synthetic. But this class is particularly disturbing, and they're water soluble. They're heavily used in tea production, post harvest, or post production. It's something that I think if we can see that being scaled back or that class of pesticide or insecticide being scaled back, I think it's only going to benefit not just humans, but the environment. And there's farmers that have switched. We've seen stories of farmers who have switched from conventional farming, right? Maybe it's a third generation farmer, fourth generation farmer, tea farmer that has switched to organic because they saw somebody in their family get sick
Ah,
from a certain type of synthetic, right? And it motivated them to take the risk because to switch from conventional and it's been working generations, right? And then to be like, I'm going to completely shift to organic. Not only does it take 5 years before you can even sell organic because you have to, like, the soil has to be organically farmed long enough to where it's considered that,
Oh,
right?
that's right, yeah.
yeah.
So it's a massive risk. And then it's like, is it even going to work? Forget about like being able to call it organic. Not only just tastes good, but is it literally going to work? It's a huge risk. And we've seen stories of that switch happening after generations, literally because they don't want to see people get sick like they saw happen with a family member or themselves. Maybe they had a bad personal reaction
Yeah.
to a chemical they were coming in contact with. So yeah, I mean it's a real conversation. It's, I know that there's probably going to be people hearing me say this, and they're going to just, completely throw it out the window, which is totally fine. Like I feel like there's a place for everyone at the table when it comes to whether or not you want to consume one tea over the other tea. I can recognize conventional teas for their certain qualities. Is it a tea that I'm going to want to personally consume 1, 2 times a day, 20 times a week?
Yeah.
That's kind of
That's
like
a
where
good
my
point.
yeah,
It's a great
yeah,
point, actually.
Yeah.
yeah. So I think it's it's like with anything in life, right? It's the reducing the things that we have control over and accepting the things we don't. And I'm like, I can't, my neighbor spraying some thing all over his lawn or whatever. I can't control that, or I can't control when I go out in public what I'm exposed to, but I can control for the most part what we consume, what we offer our customers. And I think that's kind of like an important distinction of why we do the work that we do with organics. It's literally something we can control
Yeah.
in terms of what we make available.
I can really relate to this whole thing. Sampling tencha and matcha has been quite challenging to me in a sense that I'm super sensitive to some of the fertilizers and pesticides. I
Yeah.
got like so sick
Yep.
at one time sampling a batch of tencha. I had
Really?
like
Yeah.
a
That's
week of fever.
He
no
It
way.
actually,
was
like,
like
legit fever.
really,
I was totally fine. Sam, like, looked like he had the flu. It was really
yeah,
weird.
Wow. So I mean,
it was
yeah,
so
and
sad.
I think that's like something, right, where it's so dependent on we all have this our own unique biology, right? And what might cause you could have twins, right, with the same genetics, right? And one will get cancer and one won't get cancer, and they could be exposed to very similar environments, and we don't really understand
Yeah, it's
why,
so
right?
complex.
So yeah, and I think it's nature, we're nature, and I think like it just goes back to like what we're passionate about. It's like nature supporting us supporting nature. But like I said, the tea has to be delicious. At the end of the day, the
Yeah.
tea has to be delicious. No one's going to listen if it's not. And it that makes our position, especially now with this crazy boom, it does make it very challenging. And I will say there's times where like I've gotten frustrated in the sense of we're a new kid on the block when it comes to selling matcha. I completely understand there are, especially even US based companies that have been selling matcha since 2005, 2010, whatever, right? Even longer. I think when, let's say we're so aligned, let's say with an organic farmer or producer, and we wish so much that we could buy more of that tea, right? Because our customers value that tea so much. It's such a sliver of the production, like you said, being organic and delicious. It hurts sometimes to see, let's say, another brand that doesn't really push or speak to those cultivation qualities.
Yeah,
Let's
interesting.
say their lineup is 80 to 90% conventional, and then they're taking from this highly allocated, right, like
Yep.
tea. It kind of makes us like, I'm like wondering, I'm like, what is the producer or the farmer from their perspective? Like when you look at the brand, and you look at like how passionate they are about offering organic, it's kind of this, there's like that little bit of disconnect and then on from our viewpoint, I'm like, well, that's kind of frustrating to know like our community would eat that up with so much passion and joy, but it's kind of just like thrown on here, you know. So
That's interesting. Yeah.
it's one thing that kind of crossed my mind where I'm like, that is a sticking point, especially now, because there's obviously not enough for everybody at the table. But it is what it is. And I think like sticking to our vision over the next few years is gonna pay off as the industry settles and grows and the consumers'
I
habits
think one of our
settle.
farmers used, and I use it now, but she said that she's in a state of confusion,
Yeah,
which the translation, right? But
Yeah.
I think once that state of confusion like levels out, like their peaceful, calm environments of what they've been doing for generations, hopefully is restored in some degree. I don't think it's ever going to be quite the same, but I think our goal is to protect that as best we can with
to not add
our
additional stress. I mean, that's
yeah.
like one of the biggest things that
Yeah.
we've like that has come up is that, I mean, tea, it's a relatively peaceful from the farmer's perspective, right? Like they're in these beautiful environments. It's a very peaceful. I mean, there's obviously parts of it that are very grueling in the
Yeah.
harvesting and the heat and all of that. But in terms of the lifestyle of what evolves around it, right? There's this peaceful component to the work, whether it is hand picking leaves under the shade, the way the light comes in, it's like it's a very meditative, peaceful process. And to like have this whole thing happening now globally where it's like everyone needs more, 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 you can
Yeah. It's a
understand like,
contradiction. Yeah.
right. So
Tension.
yeah, I mean, that's what we can do is to try not to add any additional problems. I think is what we're hoping
Yeah, and
we're
just
not doing.
represent their work the best we can for sure.
Yeah, to the best of our ability. Yeah.
Sam and I always say, especially within like a lot of the new matcha brands, that their values aren't what they say in like a mission statement or what they say on a website. It's in the compromises that they make, and like
Right.
you guys really like scream through that value, like that, like you're sacrificing scale and growth to not add pressure in the system, but also you're not opening up past like what your sourcing philosophy is. Like your sourcing philosophy hasn't expanded so that you can grow your business, and like it's nice to see like people living values like that. It's
Oh, man,
rare.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate. I mean, and I think
Yeah.
that's also why we're looking now to like to stuff like sencha. I mean, there's so much delicious tea out there that is not matcha, right? And
Yeah,
I think we have this opportunity, right? Looking at like, let's say, I mean, there's obviously a lot of online brands, but specifically looking at brands like that are US based or have a good US customer base. When we look at loose leaf tea, we think that there's like we can have a voice here like through our filter, through our brand. I think one of the biggest sticking points too is like people just don't know how to brew it. Like they don't have like maybe the teapot, they've never done it, so they're like they've only ever steeped tea bags or whatever, and then we have to like go back and like look at like how can we like show people drink this for a couple weeks every day, like pick a time of day that works for you to have a few minutes, drink this tea for 2 weeks straight every day and see how it affects you. And I would argue that you're going to really like the effect of it and you're probably going to keep buying it because it's delicious. It makes you feel great. It's the process again of just doing something for yourself, taking the time to like brew this tea and like connect with the person that grew it. It's this rare thing in today's world that I feel like everyone's moving so quickly to be able to
mm,
have these little moments throughout the day is it kind of sells itself, right? And it should. It's a very nice process to like take part in.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for coming. Really appreciate your time. Um, to our audience, if you enjoyed this, please consider sharing it with a friend, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.
In the
Thank you
future.
guys.
Thanks.